Greetings, friends. Welcome to another edition of, oh my gosh, I just found out that guru slash spiritual teacher slash Roshi slash Lama slash Christian mystic slash enlightened rabbi slash Sufi mystic that I respected so much, I just found out that they're a lunatic slash cult leader slash sexual abuser slash all around seemingly terrible person. Welcome to another edition of this. I've done a few videos on this topic before, usually around the issue of sexual misconduct in Zen communities, which is something that we experienced in my old Zen community firsthand and had to deal with. So today I want to talk about a spiritual community other than my own that has experienced a series of scandals decade after decade, and that is the Shambhala community. They were founded by this fellow named Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And I recently got forwarded to me by a couple different people a new article kind of exposing just how crazy, cultish, abusive, insane, Charles Manson-esque much of what Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche was involved in. And Pema Chodron, for example, gets tarnished pretty heavily as a result. She's kind of like collateral damage here. So this is from a magazine called The Guru, gurumag.com. I'm going to kind of like maybe summarize this. It took me like 30 minutes to read this piece. So I'm going to summarize it for you so you don't have to read it. And some of this stuff is kind of intense, okay? So if you can bear with me while I go through this piece and give you some of the highlights, then I'm going to kind of try and unpack it and maybe help to process what we just read, okay? Because, ooh boy, it's really a big topic, and those of us who are interested in the spiritual path, we're going to run into this problem again and again and again. The people whose books we read, whose videos we watch, whose lectures we attend, sooner or later, some of them are going to be the subject of terrible, terrible rumors and scandals and accusations. It will happen from now until the day I die. So we're going to try and unpack that a little bit, but first, let's get at the dirt on Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. So the piece starts with a quote from Pema Chodron, and she says, "My personal teacher, meaning Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, did not keep ethical norms, and my devotion to him is unshakable. My teachers have always been the wild ones, and I love them. I'm bored by the good ones." Pema Chodron. Sentiments, by the way, I completely understand. So the piece starts with Pema Chodron talking to a guy named Fred Coulson in 1990, and this is before Pema Chodron is famous, before she's written her books like When Things Fall Apart and her other famous books. And she's talking with this guy Fred, shooting the SHIP in her office with him, and she says things like she's completely and totally devoted to Trungpa Rinpoche. If someone showed her pictures of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche molesting a child, she would have no less devotion to him. So a theme in this piece is that in order to be on the inside of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's community, and there was an inside and an outside, you had to be fully 100% devoted. The piece then goes on to say that in 2018, it was revealed that Pema Chodron was complicit in covering up. So I will just sort of summarize. A student came to Pema Chodron and said that she was raped and impregnated by, says here, her Shambhala Center's leader. And Pema Chodron just kind of dismissed her claims and said, "I don't believe you." And later she told her, "If it's true, you were probably into it," so on and so forth. The woman was traumatized by this. She said Pema Chodron ripped her apart, was not compassionate, and she said, Pema told her, hey, if you don't like it, you should leave Buddhism, right? So she said, this was beyond harsh at a time where I was still experiencing uncontrollable crying. So Pema Chodron has gone on to hold her own feet to the fire with regards to this incident and several others, and it's up to you to decide whether or not she has done that adequately. She is apparently still training people in this style of Buddhism that she was taught by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, which can be kind of, according to this article, like really cultish and esoteric, okay? Woo. So another devotee of Trungpa Rinpoche in a new section called The Cult of Shambhala says that Trungpa was basically the king of the universe, and any contact with him was a blessing that was going to guarantee your enlightenment and eternal salvation. So that was the general vibe when you were around Trungpa Rinpoche and in his community, was that it was really important to maintain contact with the teacher and to be in very good standing with him. And I've heard this from different Shambhala people. The author of this article says, this was not your Thich Nhat Hanh garden variety Buddhism. It was viewed as like a family, which is to say a cult. When you're living like a family with a bunch of people, it's a cult. Anyways, Trungpa's family consisted of a government, military, ministers of the realm, a foreign service, councils, a court, servants, and more. There were ranks like warrior with major titles, flags, pins, uniforms, rituals, and secret oaths. The language Trungpa often used was very much like something you would find in a Marvel magazine being mouthed by a supervillain. The author of this article has come across something which is apparently very secretive within the Shambhala community, which is called the Decorum Manual, and the author says it works as a method of behavioral control. It gives details on how to properly eat Italian, Indian, and Chinese food, how you should dress, how you should cut your hair, how you should behave. There is then a lot of talk about just how much Trungpa was into sex and drugs and alcohol. So we all knew that he was an alcoholic to the point where they often had to carry him off of the stage. An alcoholic to the point where he would shit the bed, piss the bed, vomit the bed, and his consorts or lovers, because there was a whole group of women apparently who were his consorts, they had to be trained in how to deal with his vomiting, how to deal with him having many different lovers, how to deal with him crapping in the bed. He was also apparently, according to this, a cocaine addict, very much addicted to cocaine. Don't know if any of this is true. I am paraphrasing here. Don't come at me with your lawyers. I'm European. We don't care about your American laws. Okay, moving on. The dude snorted cocaine. He mouth-kissed with tongue, according to this article, a 13-year-old in front of a bunch of other kids. He had numerous lovers, was apparently violent with some of these lovers. There are accusations of sexual assault and sexual misconduct of all kinds. He went on to give, I believe, a kind of transmission, I don't know exactly how it works in the Shambhala lineage, but a kind of permission to teach the community to a gentleman who was infected with the AIDS virus. The gentleman infected with the AIDS virus went on to have sex with people without telling them that he had AIDS, and I believe one of these students of his even died, and apparently according to Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, or according to the author of this article, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche told his successor, if you have full devotion or if you believe in our lineage or whatever, the AIDS won't get out of you and go into other people and it won't kill you. Well, the guy died of AIDS and it did get out of him and infect other people. So yeah, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche has a really dark lineage. I mean, he cast, as was said of my teacher to me by another teacher, those who give off great light also cast huge shadows. I won't even go into maybe I will go into it. So there's a scene in here where Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche puts a candle here and a candle here, and there's like a dog right here, and he sort of like basically tortures the dog a little bit. Then he actually does a little bit of cat torture at one point. So if you didn't like the guy before now, he tortures animals too. That's Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche in a nutshell, badly, poorly, possibly inaccurately summarized here and now by me from this gurumeg.com article. What the fuck are we supposed to do with that? So there you have it. Cat torture, dog torture, rape, military-style operations. I didn't even get into the whole military aspect of things. Apparently there was like some sort of gunplay involved in the Shambhala community. So that's what I want you to think of. Anytime you hear the term Shambhala, Trungpa Rinpoche, or Pema Chodron, I want you to think of gunplay and cat torture, okay? But also, maybe you can think of this. I was in my 20s, totally adrift in Los Angeles. And one day I Googled Buddhism near me, okay? And I found the local Shambhala center. And I met a couple of guys there. Like the most normcore dudes you have ever met from like the late 90s. Like they dressed like Jerry Seinfeld, they looked like versions of Jerry Seinfeld, and one of them made music for movies and the other one was an accountant or something. And the two of them, whose names I cannot remember, gave a bunch of weekly lectures over the course of my 2 or 3 or 4 years with, I don't remember how long, maybe it was 6 years. I was with these people for a while. And they gave ordinary people lectures on Buddhism. And sometimes we would watch Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche videos very occasionally. And you could sort of see in these old videos how he looked kind of drunk. I wasn't that drawn to Rinpoche, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, but these two guys were really sincere and genuine. And they introduced me to something I had had no exposure to before, and that was Buddhism as a way of life in our contemporary society. And the terms that they used were psychological and artistic. They were intelligent and open and compassionate guys. There was not a trace of creepiness or cultishness about them. They were regular, like Hollywood dudes trying to make it in the biz, but they provided in the evenings a spiritual well filled with this deep, cool, clear water in the desert of spiritual despair that is Hollywood. Was Hollywood, is Hollywood, will probably always be Hollywood. Hollywood is a place where you find meaning, purpose, truth, and authenticity about as much as you find ice cubes in the Mojave Desert. And these guys provided that, and I'll never forget them for it. One day, I was on the internet and I discovered a story buried somewhere about how Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche forced the poet W.S. Merwin to strip down, and I don't remember what the exact story was, but it was a terrible story. And when I heard about this, I was enraged. I had no idea that this kind of sexual misconduct existed within the upper echelons of this community that I was participating in. I would not say I was a part of that community. I was participating in it. And I was so angry. And I went to one of my lectures or my classes with these guys one day, and I sat down and I was all ready to jump up and expose them as participants in an abusive cultish community. For some reason I never did. My heart just wasn't into it. Later on, I wound up leaving the community when a new teacher came, and she was from Boulder, and she seemed like one of these old, kind of dirty, without manners hippies. This was a thing in the 90s, like, you know, these like old sort of grumpy, unpleasant hippies. And I thought that this person isn't enlightened. And furthermore, there are too many candles on this altar. There are too many prayer flags hanging from the wall. There's too much incense wafting around the room. And I had a sense somewhere that if I was to keep moving along in this tradition, I would bump into some things I didn't like. And so I followed my nose and I got out of there. But I will always be indebted to the Shambhala community for what they gave me. They gave me a completely sincere and adequate introduction to Buddhism for years and years and years. So while all those things about Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche are true, and that's his legacy, this is also his legacy. The gift that was given to me and so many others, the effect that his teachings had that brought Buddhism to us when so many of us never would have gotten it. Now, this is interesting, dudes. Talk about synchronicity. So I literally just shot that last segment and went to pound some green tea because I am off coffee right now and I am experiencing caffeine withdrawal. So maybe that's why I chose this dark material. And so I opened my computer and I just was like looking at comments on YouTube, and I always try and answer, oh shoot, I lost it now. I always try and answer every single comment on YouTube. Every single person that comments, I will answer the comment. And this guy, on a video that I made like 2 years ago, it's the only comment that I haven't answered, so he just made it while I was speaking about Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. This guy left this comment on my thing. He said, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, who was a main teacher of Trungpa Rinpoche, said it well when asked about Trungpa sleeping with students. He is not as enlightened as he thinks he was. So that's so interesting that somebody wrote that on a video that I made 2 years ago while I was talking about Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. It's very synchronistic. It's going to give me energy to finish this video and to make some conclusions despite the fact that my head hurts. Some thoughts as I and you and all of us try to continue to process heroes and heroines who let us down and let us down big time. The older I get, the more I'm on this planet, the more I experience my life and live it as it is and not as I wish it was or as I try and make it in my head. The more I do that, the more I begin to realize that my life, and undoubtedly yours, all of our lives are perfectly me-sized. Your path through this life is always gonna be you-sized. It's never gonna be Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche sized, never gonna be Eckhart Tolle sized, never gonna be Oprah sized, never gonna be Pema sized. Pema sized. It's always going to be you sized. And when these big, bad, heartbreaking scandals happen where our spiritual heroes are proven to be dog and cat torturing, cocaine addicted, knife wielding cult leaders like Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, it's always for me a call back to my me-sized path and away from my projections outward onto certain flawed human beings as the ideal of the path. And sooner or later, you've got to grow out of that projection process. And the great, great gift of these flawed, great teachers is that they force us back upon ourselves, and they force us to reclaim and take back all of our projections. Two things in closing. My feeling is that a certain amount of fame and success and adulation is always corrupting. And this is sort of the price that we pay in our success culture. We're exposed to people who are successful. So I found Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche through his book, I think it was The Path of the Spiritual Warrior. The reason I found that book is because it was front and center at the Bodhi Tree Spiritual Bookstore in Los Angeles, and the reason it was front and center there is because it's a best-selling book. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche knew how to write, although he didn't write. They took his lectures and they transcribed them and turned them into these, frankly, for me, wonderful books. There is a simplicity and an aliveness to some of his books that I will always appreciate, always. And I just cannot deny that in terms of words on the page, he's one of the best teachers I came across from the last century. So it's unfortunate because he's also a freaking lunatic. Oftentimes, the cultural, spiritual, political, societal icons and heroes that we get are fucking fundamentally flawed and corrupted through the process of coming up through the ranks and becoming icons. And all that means is that you have within yourself a homing beacon for truth, and you can follow that. That's going to lead you towards a teacher and then away from a teacher. So this article that I read in the Guru Mag talked about how there's still Shambhala students out there, I don't know, putting on the funny hats and the funny outfits and marching in circles to carry on the cultish particulars of the crazier aspects of Trungpa Rinpoche's lineage. That happens a lot in these communities too. Like once the craziness is exposed, there are still these diehard students who will not let the projection, the fantasy go. That to me is like a huge tragedy. So in closing, as I said earlier, at some point your spiritual heroes fail you, and then you can go back to that homing beacon for truth inside you. And because you're small, you're nobody, you're a nothing like me, you won't be corrupted by success. Just like those two teachers that I worked with at Shambhala in Los Angeles were not corrupted by success. The guy who I think was an accountant or something for a movie studio, and the guy who wrote bad music for bad TV shows. A couple of, frankly, like low-end Hollywood dudes just getting by wearing bad Jerry Seinfeld pants and bad Jerry Seinfeld shirts back in the late 90s. They changed my life more than Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche or Pema Chodron ever did or ever will. These two guys changed my life. These low-end Hollywood dudes who were Shambhala teachers who helped an even lower-end Hollywood dude who was barely a Shambhala student survive in an extremely difficult city at a hard time in my life when I was totally lost, right? So when our heroes fail us, it's really a call. Holy cow, I don't have this fantasy anymore because it's just a fantasy. All that crap Trungpa was trying to sell his students, I don't know what he was doing or why he was trying to do that, but in any event, it's not really ultimately about Trungpa. So, these teachers fail, and it's a great opportunity to wake up within our own lives, no matter how small they are. Like our stupid little sink where we make tea that has a stupid rust stain on it. And we're invisible within these lives. And we're so afraid we're going to die and nobody's going to come to our funeral. And we're getting older. And that it all means nothing and has no significance whatsoever. Great teachers inspire in us the teaching that that's not true, but that's all they can do. They can't carry us any closer than that first inspiration. And then we have to come and face our us-sized lives and then manifest and wake up within that path. Waking up within our own tiny little lives to the truth of our lives, to the truth of the world around us and ourselves. That's been my experience, and I seem to be so passionately delivering this disquisition because I'm not living that way myself. So I'm going to sign off now and go and do some meditation and think about all this, or just sit with all this. In the meantime, if you want to go to patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner and support my little cult, you can. That's patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner. You can also give a one-time donation through PayPal. The link is in the description to this video. As always, I am so deeply grateful for people who support this channel, but you don't have to support it if you don't want to. Take care, friends, and keep living your you-sized life. We need you.